A strong legal culture creates the demand for good laws. But how do we translate societal needs and values into clear, fair, and effective rules? This is the precise challenge of our second pillar, scientific legislation. Law plays an indispensable role in our lives. Have you ever wondered about the safety of your personal information when using online apps? Or felt concerned that the terms in your rental contract might contain hidden risks? Many clauses in China's civil code stem directly from addressing such real-life issues. For example, there are clauses covering areas like online privacy infringement and lease agreements in the civil code. Through legislation, China is responding to the evolving needs of its society and citizens. These well-designed laws, so relevant to everyone, must undergo specific procedures before becoming enforceable. This lecture will explore how China approaches this process, guided by the principle of scientific legislation. Specifically, scientific legislation in China requires legislation to adapt to the development of the times, respond to public concerns, and be in line with historical traditions. Firstly, to be dynamic, our laws must adapt to the development of the times. The core of scientific legislation is keeping pace with the times and abiding by objective laws. This means that when formulating laws, it is necessary to fully consider current societal realities alongside future trends. To be specific, laws should accurately reflect social needs, embody the characteristics of their era, and effectively address emerging demands and challenges. The Civil Code stands as a landmark example of China's legislative progress. It not only systematizes existing civil laws and regulations, but also introduces timely innovations to meet the changing needs of modern society. Rapid economic development has brought about significant environmental challenges. Today, humanity faces increasingly pressing issues like resource depletion and environmental pollution. These issues threaten both survival and progress. They may also affect economic development and endanger public health. Drawing on extensive practical experience and responding to the conditions of the new era, China has formally codified the Green Principle in Article 9 of its Civil Code as a basic tenet. This article provides that when conducting a civil activity, a person of the civil law shall act in a manner that facilitates conservation of resources and protection of the ecological environment. The Green Principle was implemented into almost 30 specific rules in various parts of the Civil Code. This aims to promote the protection of the ecological environment and the efficient use of resources by the whole society. It also provides a legal basis for pursuing liability for all kinds of acts that damage the ecological environment and the natural resources. In this way, China's legislation transforms the concept of saving resources and protecting the environment from a mere slogan into a legal imperative. This shift makes green not just a principle, but a clear guide for action. With China promoting carbon peaking and carbon neutrality goals, new energy vehicles have gained popularity. Consequently, disputes over the installation of charging piles have gradually become a hot issue in the management of residential communities. In 2023, the Tongzhou Primary People's Court in Beijing heard a case involving a charging pile dispute, where the green principle was applied in the judicial process. In this case, the property owner leased both a traditional parking space and a new energy parking space. When the property management refused to install a charging pile in the traditional parking space, the owner filed a lawsuit. During the trial, the court pointed out that the owner failed to make full use of the new energy parking space, and this did not fulfill the ecological obligation to avoid resource waste. In a groundbreaking decision, the court introduced the concept of green performance obligations, emphasizing that the owner has the obligation to implement the contract in a green way. The court resolved the dispute in accordance with the green principle and the relevant provisions of the Civil Code. In doing so, it balanced the personal convenience with the principle of resource conservation and ecological protection. From a global perspective, no other country or region has stipulated the green principle as a fundamental tenet in its Civil Code. China is the first to incorporate this principle into its legal framework. This legislation reflects China's deep respect for the natural environment and aligns with the traditional concept of harmony between humanity and nature. It also responds to the public's growing demand for a better ecological environment and addresses the urgent need for environmental protection in today's society. As internet and data technology are developing rapidly, cybersecurity concerns have become more pronounced, and the abuse of technology has emerged as a global issue. In the digital age, artificial intelligence, especially AI face swapping technology, also called deepfake, has gained widespread attention and debate on ethical, legal, and social fronts, owing to its highly realistic and indistinguishable characteristics. Smartphone users may be familiar with deepfakes. For example, there was a special effect that appeared in short videos a few years ago. The users uploaded a photo, and the person in the photo would appear to twist their necks with their eyes wide open and sing a funny song. Some other apps promoted features like just a photo and you can instantly become the star of a video, or just a selfie and watch your appearance change. In 2024, a high-profile AI face swapping crime shocked the world. It drew attention to the growing abuse of AI technology for criminal activities and the need to protect young people online. Victims found that the image of their faces had been used in illegal content by criminals and maliciously disseminated through social media. When emerging technologies become tools for crime, how can we safeguard our rights? Article 1019 of the Chinese Civil Code and the Personal Information Protection Law have established the legal basis and framework for portrait rights and personal information protection. In response to the rapid development of AI and the associated risks, numerous new internet-related laws and regulations were introduced to continuously strengthen the regulation of deepfakes. Such laws include the provisions on the administration of deep synthesis of internet-based information services and the interim measures for the administration of generative AI services. In August 2023, the Hangzhou Internet Court delivered a judgment on the first public interest litigation concerning the infringement of citizens' personal information through AI face swapping. This judgment is based on the Civil Code and other relevant provisions. It marks a significant judicial milestone in defining the boundaries between technological abuse and legal rights. However, a law that is forward-looking cannot be detached from the people it serves. This brings us to the second requirement: to genuinely respond to public concerns. Scientific legislation aims to ensure that the law safeguards the fundamental interests and demands of the people. Each law in China represents a symphony of the rule of law composed by 1.4 billion people. The People's Congress system is the fundamental political system of China and an important basis for scientific legislation. It reflects the will of the people and responds to their concerns. People's Congress deputies directly participate in the exercise of national legislative power on behalf of the people. The election of National People's Congress, in short, is NPC. Deputies always follows rigorous democratic procedures. These deputies represent a broad spectrum of society, including diverse ethnic groups and social classes. As the saying goes, they came from the lathe, from the fields, from the mines, and from the Coast Guard. They put down their pliers, plows, pens, and compasses. Together with the party and the state leaders they respected, they discussed the country's most pressing issues. Furthermore, they remain closely connected to the masses. For more than 70 years, the National People's Congress and its Standing Committee have actively listened to and incorporated feedback from all sectors during the legislative process. They enacted legislation to solve the people's urgent problems. For example, just months after the amendment of the marriage law in 2001, over 4,600 legislative proposals were submitted to the legislature, with participants ranging from 90-year-olds to children as young as 13. As a declaration of the people's rights in a new era, the Chinese Civil Code covers a wide range of areas, including marriage, family, property rights, contracts, etc. It provides everyone with comprehensive legal protection from the cradle to the grave. Known as the Encyclopedia of Social Life, the Civil Code accurately responds to the concerns in people's daily lives. For example, to tackle the dilemma of identifying perpetrators in cases where objects are thrown from high places, the Civil Code explicitly prohibits throwing objects from the balcony and requires property management to strengthen prevention. It also gives public security authorities the responsibility for investigation, so that the pain hanging over the city can be regulated by law. Another example is the right of habitation. A person with a right of habitation is entitled to possess and use another person's dwelling as agreed in the contract or the will, so as to meet their needs of habitation. It is a newly established right in China's Civil Code that protects vulnerable groups from being homeless. These terms function like legal keys, unlocking solutions to old problems and preventing potential risks. In this way, the Civil Code goes beyond the words to become the heartwarming guardian of people's rights. Collecting public opinions through local legislative outreach offices is also an important way of scientific legislation. The office connects the legislature with grassroots communities, allowing citizens to directly participate in the lawmaking process. In July 2015, Hongqiao Road in Shanghai became one of the earliest local legislative outreach offices established in China. In June 2016, the Gubei Civic Center on Hongqiao Road was officially designated as the Legislative Outreach Office of the Standing Committee of the Shanghai Municipal People's Congress. In 2024, the draft regulations on the construction of a waste-free city in Shanghai were brought to the Gubei Civic Center for public consultation. Nearly 20 participants gathered to provide input covering various aspects of waste-free city construction. They include judges, prosecutors, business representatives, experts, and scholars. There were no formalities. Everyone got straight to the point and offered suggestions. Said a participant, "Since we have such a rare opportunity to be heard, I want to speak from my personal experience and share the most honest opinions." These suggestions were later submitted to the legislature, some of which were partially absorbed and appeared in the final version of the regulations. When legislation concerning the rights and interests of workers engaged in new forms of employment was under discussion, Hongqiao Road held an open-door legislative consultation meeting. In addition to legal experts, representatives from new forms of employment groups such as couriers, food delivery workers, and domestic service providers were also invited to share their perspectives. Here, the principle of where the public voice is concerned, the law responds has become a long-standing practice. As of July 2025, the Legislative Outreach Office in Hongqiao District had heard proposals on 105 draft laws, engaging more than 40,000 citizens in consultation. Another interesting story took place in Hunan Province. An 80-year-old man submitted a legislative suggestion written on a cigarette box. His idea was later adopted and ultimately incorporated in the regulations. In September 2024, the regulations on the management of small workshops, restaurants, and food vendors in food production and processing in Hunan Province solicited opinions from the grassroots level. The elderly man recalled, "I saw the announcement of the legislation to solicit opinions in the community. It was going to end that afternoon, so I was in a hurry and looked for paper everywhere. Finally, I found a cigarette box in my house. I tore it open and wrote my suggestion on the foil inside. Then I submitted it." He said, "Food safety is very important. Nowadays, many small workshops and vendors often neglect hygiene, and the food they produce is consumed by many children. I think the law must take this seriously and impose heavier penalties." His suggestion was reported by the Legislative Outreach Office in the community and attracted the attention of the Standing Committee of the Hunan Provincial People's Congress. The proposal was considered very pertinent, and should be comprehensively weighed and adopted. This story shows that in China, every proposal, suggestion, and idea reflects the wisdom and concern of the people. Even if written on a piece of secret foil, a voice from the public can still be heard and respected. Finally, by uniting this dynamism with deep roots, we achieve the third principle, ensuring our laws are in line with historical traditions. Chinese legislation is adept at drawing inspiration from excellent traditional culture and translating it into modern legal language. It is not simply reviving the past or copying, but rather innovatively transforming by inheriting and combining tradition with the development and the changes of a modern society. The integration of traditional culture and modern legal civilization promotes the creative transformation and innovative development of Chinese legal culture. It also becomes a strong cultural foundation for comprehensively building a modern socialist country on the track of the rule of law. During the Kangxi period of the Qing dynasty, there was an academician named Zhang Ying. One day, he received a letter from his family, reporting a dispute with their neighbor over a narrow strip of land just 3 feet wide. His family asked him to pull rank to win the lawsuit. After reading the letter, Zhang Ying responded with calm and wisdom. He wrote back with a brief note and a poem. Writing a letter from home miles away just for a wall, why not yield 3 feet? The Great Wall still stands today, yet the builder is no longer there. After reading his reply, Zhang's family took the initiative to give up the disputed land. Moved by this gesture, the neighbor also chose to step back. In the end, the space between the two homes became known as 6尺 alley. This story of resolving conflict with humility and goodwill has been passed down through generations and continues to inspire the spirit of modern legislation. Since ancient times, neighborly relationships have held great importance in Chinese society. There is an old saying, close neighbors are better than distant relatives. When conflicts arise between neighbors, how to strike a balance between resolving disputes and maintaining harmony. The Chinese Civil Code addresses this challenge by integrating traditional wisdom into modern legal principles. This integration is reflected in both the substance and the spirit of the law. For example, Article 288 of the Civil Code requires neighboring property owners to handle disputes in accordance with the principles of facilitation to production, convenience for daily lives, solidarity, and mutual assistance. These principles echo the message of mutual understanding and compromise found in the story of 6尺 alley. The provisions incorporate traditional cultural elements while also drawing on the core socialist values of the rule of law, good faith, and amity.